She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, this is, I love it when we cross the Atlantic to talk to people with intermittent fasting, to show you that intermittent fasting isn't just a Western or North American or some type of fad for people in the U.S. It is something that even Maryann, you in Germany, you've gotten by your hands like this, and it's changed your life. Tell me how intermittent fasting has changed your life.
How has intermittent fasting changed my life? Let me count the ways.
Right.
So many ways. Physically, obviously, I went from a size, roughly US size 22 down to a 6, maybe an 8, 6, 8. So
Wow.
Physically, obviously, health-wise, I had pretty high blood pressure. I refused to go on medication, which I would not recommend. I just kept thinking, if I do this, I'm never going to get off it. And when I would measure my blood pressure at home, it was around 160
Ugh.
over 90. So not good. Like I said, not recommendable.
Yeah.
My blood pressure now, 115 over 75. Sometimes
Wow.
it's 120 over 80. And that, I really started to see that after about 2.5 months and 3 months after I started intermittent fasting. So that went really quickly. And that's why I think that it was very much due to the intermittent fasting and not just the weight loss, because it did really set in so quickly.
Had you been on many weight loss journeys before you did intermittent fasting?
I think I am an exception to the rule here because I hadn't.
Really?
I had never seriously dieted. At the very most, you could probably count on one hand where I attempted to diet, and that would have been through calorie restriction. And probably the longest I ever got was maybe a week.
Right.
And then I just gave up because I didn't see anything. I didn't, even in just that short time period, virtue or patience is not my virtue.
Right. Well, plus you were hungry. You're
hungry. I was hungry.
Yes.
And I was hungry. And I think I just had lost hope that it was going to work, that anything was going to work. I really didn't believe things were going to change. And then I kind of slipped into intermittent fasting. It just happened. I didn't really know anything about it. There was a day that I was house sitting for the day at a friend's house because they were expecting the chimney sweeper. And I had time. I was just doing corrections. I teach. And I was doing corrections that day at home. And I thought, well, I'll just go over and help them out. And the chimney sweeper was supposed to come in 2 p.m. Didn't show up 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I didn't want to eat anything in their house. So I didn't have anything the whole day. And I had been dieting a little bit a few days before. I was doing calorie restriction. And I thought, you know what? It was 6 o'clock by the time I got home.
Wow.
I'm just going to try and not to eat. I'm going to go to bed, wake up in the morning, and then I'll eat. And I woke up and I was still alive.
Right. I can tell.
Yes. So, and that was a start. I started Googling. I started Googling fasting. And then one thing led to the other, to Jen Stevens, to Jason Fung. I'm a moderator now for the Fasting Highway. It got me into that. Yeah. And the rest is history.
So what year was that, Maryann?
It started the intermittent fasting started in February of 2020.
Oh.
And I've been in maintenance now for over a year.
So it took you a year to lose that amount of weight? And
it took me about 11 months.
Okay. How many pounds? You have to use U.S. pounds because, I can't do the whole metric.
Right. So in kilos, it was 60 kilos. That's about roughly 130 pounds.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Human.
Yeah.
A human.
Yeah. I pretty much halved myself, almost.
Unbelievable. How tall are you?
I'm 5'6".
So that's
and I weigh now
weight.
About between 140, 145. So I don't have a really set weight. It's a range of 5 pounds roughly, 140 to 145.
Was this your high school or college weight?
It was probably my high school weight, yeah. In college too, I didn't have a weight problem really. I was probably actually a little bit less in high school. Didn't have a problem with my weight as a child or as a young adult. It started, the pounds started coming on probably when I was after my third child, I think. And then it really accelerated after my father's death.
Okay, so we understand that, and Jason Fung famously said, obesity isn't a caloric problem; it's a hormonal problem. And he's talking about insulin, YY peptide, ghrelin, leptin, all these magical things that have to communicate. We know hormones have to communicate, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, where do you think your hormone highway went awry? What do you think did it? Do you think the stress made you eat more and that made you insulin resistant? Do you think, because now we also forget that, we know as women that our female hormones have something to do with it too, that men don't really see as much. Now we know men have weight problems, but what do you think triggered this hormonal imbalance?
I think what triggered it is my dad died very suddenly of a heart attack in November of 2003.
And was he in the U.S.?
He was in the U.S.
Okay.
And so I was far away, exactly.
Yeah.
And we were very tight. He was a real pillar and a real rock for me. And bam, it was just gone from one day to the next. That was a real shock. My parents had a very strong relationship. My mom was lost. After that, really, her world ended.
I'm so sorry.
And yeah, it was, it was 18 years ago now, but sometimes it feels like it's even longer. Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
But so I think emotionally, I was in a really dark place. I wanted to be there for my mom. I couldn't. I had 3 young children here. And I think the eating became emotional to fill a void, and also the worry and the stress. And that's when you talk about the hormones. I think I was just all over the place. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking of what people don't understand is, and Dr. Bickman in his book, Why We Get Sick, fascinating book, fascinating researcher. I'm not on the 3rd time of listening to the book. Like, I love the science behind it, but he also talks about, and Dr. Fung does too, they both intimate, Maryann, that again, yes, calories have something to do with it because we're talking about math in some ways. He goes, but it also is the trigger of what it does. The more we eat and the heavier we get, the more insulin resistant we get.
Right.
So that puts you behind the 8 ball. And then, so what you really were having to do was cure that insulin resistant, because now you're insulin sensitive.
Right.
If you're that weight and you're comfortably that weight and you're metabolically flexible, you, for the first time, have insulin sensitivity. Well, not the first time. You probably had it until your world was rocked. Having babies rocks your world, hormonally, emotionally, physically. I mean, we know that. It's worth it. We all love it. We love our kids. And especially, you have to talk about too, you are not, where did you grow up in the U.S.?
I grew up in upstate New York, so just outside of Rochester.
Okay, so the weather's probably the same to what you have in Germany.
Actually, it's milder here.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
You're a little further south.
It's funny. If you look at it, we're actually further north, but I think it's because of the Gulf Stream.
Oh.
We're at the height of Valencia, Spain. So southern Spain, Rochester is. I'm sorry, Rochester is. Rochester's at the height of Spain.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But because of the Gulf Stream, it makes everything, I'll say milder here.
Oh, wow. Germany's beautiful. I love Europe. But you just had a lot of things to deal with, and your hormones kind of came crashing down on you.
They did. I think that's very true. And later, I'd say so this was in 2003. The kids were young. My mom, my heart just bled for her. She was spending longer periods of time with us, which wasn't always easy. And she started to develop dementia. So
Oh, gosh.
my dad died in 2003, roughly 2000, I'll say in 7, we started noticing things. By 2011, I had her move over to Germany because she couldn't live alone anymore.
Are you an only child?
I'm not, but I have 2 older brothers who it would have been very, very difficult for them to have taken her in.
Yeah.
So I had her come here, and that was a rewarding time, but also an extremely challenging time because she just wasn't the same person anymore, as I'm sure many people who deal with dementia know. Right?
Heartbreaking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think I lost myself, Lisa, in those years too. I think I was teaching still throughout that time, but I think I became so wrapped up in caregiving, whether it was for the 3 kids who were at this point were in their teen years, also not easy, and also for my mom. So I lost myself. She died in 2014, and really it took me another almost 6 years to find myself again through intermittent fasting,
to catch your breath. That's what I think they call the sandwich generation. It's when we're in the middle. We're taking care of teens and young adults or toddlers and
right.
ailing parents, and
that's right.
It's a very challenging time.
It is.
So are you saying it was around 2004 then that you started to see your weight creep up?
Yeah, it was about 2004. I think, I had gained a couple of pounds after each child, but not that much. But 2004 is when you really started to notice, that I was getting bigger. Yeah.
And what did you think about yourself? Did you think this is a part? Because what I like about you is you weren't a lifelong dieter.
No.
So you weren't unhappy with yourself. It may have been the medical condition that propelled you to look into fasting. You said the high blood pressure.
I kind of slithered into fasting, right? I think the years between 2004 and basically 2020 when I started, I think the first few years I was just so enthralled in the caregiving, and I really didn't have time for anything else. I didn't have the mental capacity anymore.
Right.
I was full. And then I think I had gotten so big by the time that my mom had died. I thought, you know what? It's too late. Nothing is going to change. At this point, I was perimenopausal. I had extreme problems with my, I bled very heavily. I was extremely irregular.
Mm-hmm.
I was tired all the time.
It's awful.
And so I just really didn't think anything was going to work anymore. I kind of resigned to the fact that I was just going to be obese, and how I felt about myself, I was ashamed. I was very, very ashamed. I think at the time I didn't know it, but when I look back, I think I went through a period of depression. My favorite piece of clothing, was my pajamas. And if I didn't have to go anywhere, I didn't get out of them, which is entirely different now. I love getting dressed in the morning, and I've got a closet full of clothes. And
oh, that's so exciting.
So, but I think I was very ashamed of my situation. There were often times when we were invited out, I would decline. I was always the biggest one in the room. And and it's not because I think it's something that I didn't grow up with, really. It came later in my adult life.
Were your mother or father overweight, or brothers?
No, brothers, no. My brother has a little bit of a weight problem, but it's not severe. And that came also later in life. As a teenager and a young adult, he was also very, very, very lean.
You mentioned something that I've heard Jen Stevens reference, and that is when you have a weight problem, you scan the room and you peg yourself the largest person here.
All the time.
Really?
And I was always the largest person, right? So I was at my heaviest in January of 2020. I was 275 pounds, right? So I was always the largest person, especially in Europe, right? So obesity is a problem here too, but it's not quite, the rates aren't quite as high as they are in Europe.
And you know why? Because y'all still smoke. not y'all, but when you're in Europe, they are smoking everywhere.
That is true. Yeah.
And they're walking everywhere.
And they're walking everywhere. That's very true. But it's also possible because generally things are much closer, right? When I think of where my parents lived, you needed a car to go to the post office. So it is a very different setup simply. Yeah.
So you're saying you really felt, pardon the pun, the weight of that because European culture and Western American culture, we know, are very, very different. And so you weren't looking at a room full of overweight people. You felt like you were the one. I've heard Jen say that. And she also, her saying, because my weight loss was 10 pounds, but I lost the mindset. I never think about food. I never think about my body. I never think about weight. I'm free. You know what I mean? That was a noose of just my weight going up and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it was insulin resistance because I was eating all day, because I was told to eat 5 and 6 times a day. Yeah, and so I did it because I'm obedient. I also have thyroid disease and postmenopausal, and I have some autoimmune conditions that probably perpetuated that. So I can't put myself in your shoes. But the other thing Jen would say is then when photos were taken, she would always go in the back. I bet you're the front now.
I have so few. I am. I'm a ham. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. I have to control myself. Yeah, exactly. If I have very few photos of myself when I was obese, very few. And the ones that I do have, I've got a big shawl. I was an expert at trying to cover myself up. I only wore black. Big shawl. My purse was always there, or a pillow if I was sitting down, or I'd be hiding behind my husband or behind something. Yeah. But again, I have very few, very, very few photos of when I was obese. I managed always to dodge the camera. I am.
Are you married now? So what does your husband think? He had known you at this weight?
Yes, I've been married to him for 30 years. That's why I ended up in Germany.
Okay.
Well, he knew me when I was thin and he saw me gain and he never really said anything. What does he say now? Yeah, he's very happy. We both are. I can do things again with him. We used to hike a lot and bike a lot. And there were years I just couldn't do it anymore. Physically, I couldn't do it. So if that's added a whole new aspect again to our marriage, really.
Are you empty nesters yet?
Almost. We have to help the youngest a little bit. We're nudging a little bit, but he's very comfortable at home.
Yes, I understand. Well, it is my 34th wedding anniversary is tomorrow. In fact, we went on our honeymoon to Innsbruck and we flew into Germany.
Oh, nice.
From Munich. Innsbruck. So I just have, it has a special place in my heart, but empty nesting is the greatest invention ever.
Oh, I know.
And this is how my husband said it the other day. Cause like tomorrow we're getting in the car, we're in Little Rock, Arkansas, driving to Dallas, Fort Worth, 5 hours.
Oh, that's a drive.
Yeah. Not a big deal though. I mean, we have to do it all. When we're in Little Rock, you kind of have to make the trek to go anyplace. Okay. So easy. And one of our kids lives there, so it's easy for us. But I asked my husband, because 2 weeks ago we got in the car and we drove to the beach, which was 7.5 hours away because we could. Mm-hmm. And I said, being an empty nester is like dating. He said, except we have money now. Because when you were dating, you didn't have any money.
Exactly.
And now we can afford to stay at a real hotel and eat out and do all the things you want to do. So I'm just telling you, you're this close. And if you still have one at home that's at an age where you don't have to watch him all the time, you have the freedom.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think also that played a role in the weight loss because I had time to concentrate on myself finally. Right. Yeah. And I think that's an example of the positive side of being an empty nester. Very much so.
Right, for sure. And, you were a caregiver for a long time. And Maryann was last on the list. You had your mother, you had your 3 kids, you had your husband, and I don't know which order. It doesn't matter. You had 5 humans before you could even think about what you could do.
Right.
And so,
I probably shouldn't have, I think that you could probably balance it better than I did. I think I was just too engulfed in the caregiving, which there were many things I would do over possibly and concentrate just a little bit more on myself. But see, it all worked out in the end.
Now, has the new skinny Maryann gotten on an airplane in the last year?
The new skinny Maryann was on an airplane. I visited my brother in September of 2019. Now, no, I'm sorry, in September of 2021.
Oh, okay.
In September of 2019, I also was in an airplane en route to visit my brother, and the morbidly obese Maryann couldn't buckle the seatbelt. Right. So
wait, say that again. Did you have to get the double buckle?
I was too embarrassed. I couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't. So I was extremely skilled in hiding it. Yeah.
Good.
Right. And then on the way back, so that was going out to the States. On the way back, I was sitting next to a very thin young man, and I was trying to buckle it. I was, lifting up the rolls and just trying somehow and trying to make it as inconspicuous as possible. And then he said to me, ma'am, can I help you?
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I was like, no. Anyway, after about a minute after he asked that, I heard the click. So
you were like, I'm not getting up to pee. I'm not moving.
I did not move. So anyway, so that was, something that I thought, okay. During that same trip in September of 2019, I went up to Canada to visit my cousin, and I sat on her kitchen stool and it broke.
Oh, Maryann. Oh.
Yeah. So, and then on that same trip, I went out to breakfast with my brother. And they always sit in a booth. I fit in the booth, but my stomach was touching the table, right? Yeah. So these were all things that I was, I've got to do something. I've just got to do something. But I couldn't, right? But thankfully, 5-6 months later, like I said, I kind of slid into the fasting. I didn't eat that day. And then I thought, I'm just not going to eat until the morning. Made it through the night. And I haven't looked back since.
But see, if I had walked into it that way, I would think I was harming myself because the media and medical professionals and personal trainers have told us to eat, as I said earlier, 5 and 6 times a day. So I would have then the next day eaten 10 to 12 times a day. I mean, I don't know what I thought. So I'm so proud of you for taking the plunge and just going, you know what? I feel kind of good.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of things at play. I think I wish I could bottle that mindset that I had at the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know really what it was 100%. So all of these experiences that I had in the fall of 2019 certainly helped. And then on January 24th, 2020, and I consider this date to be my second birthday, because we were putting together a video for a family friend who was turning 80, and I was being confronted with all of this coverage, all of these photos from the last 30 years where I was thin. And then you saw how I just started to gain.
The progression.
And I knew that I was thin back there. That was not a surprise back then. But I remembered how I felt in each one of those photos. And I remembered the ease that I had with myself when I was thinner and how comfortable I was in my own skin. And that's what really hit me when I saw that video at the end. And that really, I think, was the straw, in a sense, that broke the camel's back, if I want to say it like that, that got me, to the mindset where I needed to be.
I think you also point out that this isn't about vanity. The media has somehow pushed this into these overweight women who are fine and healthy, but life is simpler when you're slimmer. You flew then and felt comfortable. You got into the booth at the restaurant or at the cafe or the diner or wherever it is. You don't worry about sitting on somebody's stool, and you get to enjoy your life of hiking again. No one wants it. I mean, we all know that overweight people have some impediments, and we're not here to condemn or criticize. We're here to really to encourage you and give you the baton to say, now you can do it. I mean, you've shown that.
So true. Just the simplest things, tying my shoes was a huge burden. I only had slip-on shoes because it was so difficult for me to bend
Oh,
over and tie my shoes. I mean, something as simple as that. Um, Going to the beach, we go often to France, to Brittany, and walk along the
well, of
coast on the
course you
beaches.
do. Right.
And
Remember, I
um,
go to Fort Worth for a dinner.
well,
You go to Brittany, France.
well, it's you know what? It's about a 9.5 hour drive, so
Okay. Okay.
probably roughly the same distance,
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
little bit further. But I would always, whenever we would go to the beach and walk along the coast, inevitably water would come unexpectedly splashing up. And I very often had soaking wet feet because boots would not fit over my calves, right?
Uh,
So, and now I go, I walk practically in the water because I have knee-high boots. Everything fits. There's so many things that have improved. Like you just mentioned the hiking. I bike a lot. Things that I used to love to do when I was thin, I can now do again. Um, Walking into a boutique store,
yeah.
I can do it without feeling, oh my God, they're going to be wondering what I'm doing in here. I go in there, and if I look and I walk back out, or there's so many things. I've got so much more confidence. I tried to hide before. I just literally tried to hide, and
Yeah.
now I'm gregarious. I used to always be outgoing and talkative, and I'm there again. I found myself again, basically, as corny as it might sound.
No, I think it's beautiful. Now, your vocation is you're a teacher
Hmm.
are you in the German public schools? You're in college or
I'm at
university?
college. I'm at a university.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And speaking fluent German, which I think is fascinating.
I still make a few mistakes, but basically, it's pretty fluent. Yeah,
What
yeah.
what have your students said? Like that semester where you just started. Tell me about your weight loss there. But what was the students' reaction to the vanishing Maryann?
I haven't had any because all of my courses have been online because of COVID.
Oh,
So
didn't even
this
think
weight
about that.
loss started in 2020. That first semester, everything went online.
Yeah.
But the next coming semester, starting in April, will be in the classroom again. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, you're gonna have so much energy on campus.
Oh, it's going to be night and day. I'll be able to go up that flight of stairs to get to my classroom without having to pause and breathe and be out of breath. Yeah.
To being winded. Okay.
Hmm.
So when I'm an intermittent fasting coach, I'm sure you are too. I mean,
No,
we're
I'm
all
actually not.
well, but you are. You know what I mean? Being a
Well,
moderator,
yeah, that's true.
you were
That's
you
true.
were doing things to encourage people. And so I could say we all kind of lock arms with that because we want to hang the banner high that you can have better health because we call it the health plan with the side effect of weight loss, right?
That's right. That's right.
But the first day and I even have a couple of obese clients, but they're worried to even get to 16 hours of fasting.
Mm, mm,
Girl, the
mm.
first day you did like a 36-hour fast and didn't
Yeah.
even know it.
But I think that is because of where I was. I think, um, like I said before, if I could bottle that mindset, I would love to pass it around. I don't know how I got to how I got started. I really can't explain it. I was so determined and I needed to do it. I needed to do it mentally as well as physically. And I tend to also have an all or nothing personality. So
Right.
I think it's also really important to know yourself. I don't think my route is probably the right way for most people, but it was right for me because if I had lost slower, um, I think I would have given up. I think I would
Oh,
have
you
given up.
needed that.
I needed it. I
Okay.
really needed it. And I really respect people that have the patience because it's probably better to lose slower, I would think. I mean, that's what we hear all the time. And
But I don't
um,
know if that's true anymore.
that's true too. That's true too. I mean, certainly when I think of my blood pressure, that normalized, like I said before, after about 2.5 months. So um, it was the right way for me to pull off the Band-Aid method. I think Jen
Yep.
Stevens says it that.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah.
So you started that first day, you did a 36-hour fast. You started doing research. Um, Are there any leaders in Germany that we know of in the fasting community? Like we have Australia with Graham, we have the U.S. with Jen Stevens and Dr. Fung.
I really concentrated on the States, and I'm not sure if that was because of my Google searches.
Yeah.
Germany has the Buchinger Clinic, which has been around since the early 1900s. They have several fasting clinics here. And I'm sure that there are German personalities too involved in getting the word out. But I was really concentrated on the States. So I was mesmerized by Jason Fung at the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So, but I guess too, a 36-hour fast, then did you in your Google search start thinking, oh, you can do a daily fasting window, you can do one meal a day, you can do alternate day fasting. How did you start after that first rip the Band-Aid off?
I think I noticed intuitively that this was it was going to work for me because it just fit my personality. It fit my personality. I could do it. It was easier for me not to eat a day. And to be that much freer the next day than it would have been to say, okay, you can have, 8 hour, in this 8 hour window, you can have 2 meals. It would have been more difficult for me, I think. And they also have with alternate day fasting, they have, of course, where you're allowed 500 calories, right? So modified alternate day fasting was also not an option for me. I've never even tried it because I know that I would find it very difficult to stop at that.
The all or nothing personality doesn't. You have to know yourself. And I understand people. So when someone tells me I'm all or nothing, then I say, then let's go for it. If they have some weight to lose, then let's go for it. And you know what? Every time they come back and go, I love this. I feel free. Plus the weight loss is pretty spectacular. And not just, and I have one client, a lot of men don't weigh. They go by the notches on their belt. And so after a month, this one client I have, it's 4 notches on his belt and he's doing alternate day fasting. And he only does about maybe 2 fasts a week, 40 hour fast a week, which probably is fine. Again, whatever works for you, but that is so motivating for him. And he went to his physician yesterday, getting his lab work done already. His blood pressure's down. So that's another notch in the belt, proverbial notch in the belt. Knowing that you're accomplishing these things. So you then started with a true alternate day fasting of maybe for people listening, and Jen Stevens says that she did it this way. She would eat Sunday and didn't eat again until Tuesday, Sunday night dinner, Tuesday lunch. Is that about what you did, Maryann?
That's roughly. I just really looked at it very much so. I really looked at it as I ate one day and I did not eat the next. So I wasn't really counting hours. They're generally now. I'm not hungry when I wake up after a fasted day. So
isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. I do get a little bit hungry. Say, if we take that example with the Sunday, so I have dinner Sunday evening, Monday evening, I'm going to drink some tea or have an extra glass of water because I do get a little, an appetite. But then come Tuesday morning, I'm not hungry. I can easily go till noon, which is always surprising to me, right? So very often sometimes it'll be a 35-hour fast, sometimes it'll be a 40-hour fast. I usually don't go to a 42, but I don't look at the hours on the clock.
Right. That's good. So then on your refeed day, because as we all know, scientifically, that's it. That's the sweet spot. And that's what helps up-regulate your metabolism, unlike what you've been told for 2,000 years. You need to eat a lot on that up day. So tell me what your up day looks like.
My up day, what I try to do is I do try and stay away from processed foods and sugars. For sure. However, if it's worth it, for example, like I said before, we're often in Brittany, and the cakes and the tarts there are, first of all, they're works of art.
They are works of art.
They are. So I'll splurge there. It's not like I completely abstain from sugar. I don't. But I do try and limit it, consciously try and limit it. I try and limit my breads, etc. So a typical day food-wise, eggs, sardines, beef, sometimes an oatmeal, rarely a granola that I make myself. Lots of fruit. I do eat a lot of fruit. I'm kind of a fruit
But your
junkie.
cream is so good in Europe.
Oh yeah.
The beef and the cattle and the cream and the dairy products. I mean, obviously, come on.
Yeah. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to say, which is probably the cheese. I do eat an awful lot of cheese too.
It's so good. Oh.
Yeah. Cheese is that's almost probably my main staple.
And wine.
I eat a lot.
I love when you go to Europe and in the US, they ask you at the restaurant, would you like water or tea? In Europe, they say, do you want sparkling water or Prosecco? An Aperol Spritzer. I'm like, well, I want the Aperol Spritzer. Right? If we're talking about lunch, of course, I'm sleepy by 2 p.m. When I went to Europe, when I had been fasting about 11 months. So I was totally adjusted. And so I think I opened my window at 2 there and had something. I'd have the Aperol Spritzer by 3 o'clock. I wanted a nap. And then I would eat again. I would have 2 meals. I did eat 2 meals a day when I was in Europe because I was in Europe.
Right.
As you know, I walked all over all the countries. We were mainly in Italy, and then we were in England, and lost probably 2 pounds. And I ate like royalty.
Wow, great, very good.
Ate like royalty because again, that is a European lifestyle of eating well, eating later. I felt like they were eating later in the afternoon. They were like 1 or 2 o'clock is when they had their lunch because we don't eat breakfast as intermittent fasters. And then I would try to just wrap mine up a little earlier just because I can't eat before I go to bed. I have a rare swallowing disorder. So I do have to kind of have my food finished about 7 o'clock. And it worked out fine. So what's a typical day for you now that we say in maintenance? I don't want people to think, though, that you once were in a diet. Now you're not. It's just that now you're not having to look at the scale and measure, and you're not pursuing it. So you just live your life now. So what is your life now?
I will always be vigilant about my weight because I never want to go back to where I was.
Right.
And that's my motivation, and every day when I bend over to tie my shoes, I have a very concrete reminder of where I came from.
Right.
So my motivation is exactly not wanting to go back to a life half lived. So I don't consider it a diet. It's a complete lifestyle change. So I'm still doing alternate day fasting, but but not necessarily every other day. I'm very lax with it in the sense that there may be a week that I do 4-3 where I let's see. Yeah, where I eat 4 days and I don't eat for 3.
For 3 days, yeah.
Right. I might do a 5-2.
Yeah.
If necessary, after a trip back from France. I'm not quite as lucky as you. I tend to gain more, or I don't lose when I go to France.
Yeah.
I'll gain the 2 pounds. Then I might go back to true alternate day fasting for a week or 2. Yeah. So I'm not obsessed in any way with it, but I am very vigilant.
I think Dr. Michael Mosley, which is a name that kind of introduced us through the BBC. And I think it was 5-2, ate for 5 days and didn't eat for 2 days was kind of how it got introduced into our nomenclature. And so some people may reference that. In fact, some of the scientific literature even includes the eating normally for 5 days and then 2 days. I think he had 2 days of not eating, or did he have 2 days of 500 calories? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure. I think no eating, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I think that's right too. So some people do. So we're not saying not everyone does an alternate day fasting, but they do they incorporate fasting somehow.
Right.
And that's a great way to do it.
I'm sure you're also familiar with the article that came out, I believe it by Mr. Mattson, in the New England Journal of Medicine, I think December of 2019. That's true alternate day fasting. A lot of what was reported on was true alternate day fasting. So that was also something in there in regards to my blood pressure, where I assumed that it was fasting related and not necessarily just because of the weight loss, because it did kick in so quickly. That stated in that report too, that very often they see a reduction in blood pressure, which is due actually to the fasting and not to weight loss. So that kind of confirmed.
Isn't that interesting that those are two different tenets within this field or this umbrella that we're talking about of better health?
Mm-hmm.
Fasting has one component and weight loss is kind of a different component.
Yeah, very much so.
And that also points, I mean, we make through deductive reasoning, then that calorie restriction that's why calorie restriction isn't long-term, because there's some magic with fasting.
Exactly.
And we know that because of the term autophagy,
exactly,
which is a cellular clean out. And, and Dr. Fung, I love it when the medical team and the PhD researchers, so not just anecdotal, but they will say, we see that this, the fact that autophagy was even, it won the Nobel Prize for Medicine 2016. So then what it did was for the Michael Mosleys of the world and other people who had started dabbling into fasting, it gave some scientific evidence and it gave it the bricks it needed to build the wall that says, this is going to work for you. This is not just a diet.
Yeah.
This is a lifestyle that has health benefits.
Very much so. Very much so.
Because that's our pushback.
Yeah, very much. So there's also something, we hear a lot about body recomposition with fasting.
Yes.
And I had always, when I was thin, I had a well-endowed derriere, and I was also on top fairly well-endowed, but I had a very, very flat stomach and a very small
curvy,
waist.
I
was very curvy.
Yeah.
And when I started to gain the weight, I didn't recognize my own body. I just had a huge midsection. I was a very big apple.
Yeah.
And that has reversed itself.
Wow.
Really back to where I was, I'm not 18 anymore. I'm not saying I have that body, but I certainly have a flat stomach again. And, my waist is very clearly there. So I also think that that's got to do with the fasting and not just the weight loss.
Right. That's exactly it right there. Part of autophagy and its magical cellular cleanout is also the way that the guy with the notches on his belt, that things get slimmer. And Jen Stevens tells that story, which is one of my favorites, how she weighed 130 and she didn't weigh again, but she had lost 2 sizes. She thought for sure she was 120, maybe in the teens.
Right.
She was only 126, but she was a size 0. So who cares?
Right.
Who cares what that mean old scale says?
Yeah.
If the notches on your belt or if you're getting new clothes. So then you were getting new clothes all the time because you were the incredible vanishing woman.
I was. I was really, I'd order something and by the time it came, it'd be too, I'd have to send it back. So, that's stabilized now. So.
Now tell me then, so you never did a daily fasting window. That wasn't something that sounded good to you. And that right now doesn't sound good.
I've toyed with it. I thought, maybe I'll go into 1 meal a day. But I've never pursued it because it fits my mindset and my personality so good. Just not thinking about food for an entire day. That's it.
Can you believe you live in that freedom?
I'm thankful I am living it. Yeah. Can I believe it? If you had told me this 2.5 years ago, I would have said you're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way. And I still get, I with my friends here in Germany, I don't get much pushback. I don't get, too many crazy looks. People are fairly supportive. I get a little bit of pushback from back home from some friends and family where they just think it's nuts. I mean, they see the results, but they still think it's a little bit odd, right?
We have a diet culture in the West or the US especially. Yes, we just have a diet culture. We all have diet brain. So is that part of the European culture? Because people eat and drink and, like I said, smoke and go to cafes and don't think about what calories are, right?
I really notice it in France. There's a difference. So Germany is one of the heavier countries in Europe. So I think the UK is the heaviest. And then I think number 2 on the list is Germany. So you're seeing, people are becoming bigger in Germany too. It's not quite to the rate, at the pace that the US is changing or has changed. But in Brittany, we were just there a couple of weeks ago, and I said to my husband, my gosh, you really see a difference between back home in Germany and here in Brittany. People are eating cheese. They're drinking red wine. They're eating white bread.
And bread.
Baguettes, croissants.
And butter.
And butter. Believe me, the butter's good there.
Yes.
Salted butter. Oh.
Yes, it's so good.
The cakes, anyway, I could go on and on. I think the difference is, and particularly in Brittany is a fairly rural area of France, but they're very traditional in that breakfast is very small, lunch is a huge thing, and then they'll have a little dinner, unless they're going out in the evening, right? So, and then they'll eat dinner like at 9 o'clock. We tend to be at the restaurant.
Isn't that
crazy? Right when they open at 7, we're there. But that's the point. The restaurants are closed between 2 and 7.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, you will rarely find a restaurant that offers breakfast. So the availability of food, not that it's not available. Every grocery store is open until 8 o'clock in the evening, but you're not being bombarded with it constantly.
Right.
And I think that makes a huge difference. And when I go back home, and States will always be home for me. So when I'm visiting my brother, and I just drive down the road and it's restaurant after restaurant. It's just, and the advertising on television. Yeah.
Right.
I have a lot of sympathy because it's difficult when you're constantly being, bombarded or, this is constantly being thrown at you. And I think that's got something to do with it too. When I compare it to Brittany, where it's just not there, right? The people don't snack. They're eating at these very regular times, but
I totally believe that.
They're eating well. They're eating well. That's for sure.
I totally believe that. Here we've got Taco Bell talks about 4th meal. Well, as intermittent fasters, I might not even have 2nd meal in the day.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I don't have the space anymore to eat more than what I eat.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of talk about with my intermittent fasting groups is, and I say, I'm 5'8" and weigh 150. I weighed 140 in college. That was 37 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a size 6, so I feel good. And so I've told my intermittent fasting groups, I say, well, I could challenge myself and completely eliminate all carbs, all sugar, all alcohol, but that would be a very unhappy Lisa.
Yeah,
I like being a happy Lisa that can have some red wine or a bite of key lime pie. I don't eat the whole thing because I don't my apostat works so well in my brain. Yeah. Which then you see it is a biological temperament that we have toward overeating.
Yeah.
And once you cut out the biological temperament toward overeating, I really couldn't overeat because it'd make me ill.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you train yourself to eat 4 or 5 times a day and have 4th meal, then your body accommodates it. And again, your insulin is dictated by when you put something on the fork. And Dr. Fung does like to say, well, I do like it when you cut out your carbs. I do like it when you have a high fat, low carb diet. But let's not even do that at first. I don't tell people to do that because I always say, I'm not the judge of your plate. You're the judge of your plate. But then as you go along, and Jen Stevens has said this, then you kind of have to tweak it. Yeah. Then you see, she has said, I had to cut out the Prosecco during the week and the desserts. Mm-hmm. So I could be the size that her body is. She's a small framed woman. Mm-hmm. And, she's a 0. I mean, that's just it. Right. This is a woman who was her size a 24 or something like US size? Or 18, I don't really, and I'm sorry if that's if Jen someone tells Jen I said that, I don't know sizes beyond like 12 and 14.
I wouldn't think, because I think if I remember correctly, her highest weight was 220 or 230, 210?
210, I remember saying that.
then she probably wasn't a 24 because I was a 22, 24 and I was 275.
And you were, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So strike that from the record. Anybody taking notes, strike that from the record. But my point is she has got, and maybe she said it was a tight 16, 18.
Yeah.
I don't know those sizes.
Yeah.
But to go to where she's not even, it's an egg. It's a 0. I mean, there's not much to her, but she said she had to tweak some things. That's my point. You do have to tweak some things.
Very true. Very true.
You've had to do that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
At the beginning, I'd say the first 8 months, I really didn't have to do anything. But I was extremely consistent. Yeah. I was very consistent the first 8, 9 months. Then I realized, okay, I've got this. And I started feeling much more confident in myself. And, I wasn't scared about gaining weight again. I became more confident. And if there was something special, then I would eat. And I always ate carbs the entire time. I tried to stay away a little bit. I still eat bread, but not as much as I used to. But potatoes and rice, and I'm still eating that. But I do know that if I eat too many desserts, too much sugar, that's not good for me. First of all, I don't feel good after I do it. And so it really has to be worth it. And also I find that the more simple carbs that I eat, my fasting day, the next day will be harder.
Oh,
so I'll get hungry earlier in the day.
Yes. I see that all the time. And my son, who's introduced me to intermittent fasting, he's the one who said his trick is he would eat an avocado before when he closed his window and he would brush his teeth. He said he did that just to get in the habit, to tell his brain we're not, and his body and palate, we're not eating anymore.
Well, that's a great.
And he said if he closes his window with high carb food, he's hungrier the next day early in the day. So I would say that's pretty universal for everybody. Now, do you weigh every day, Maryann, or do you have honesty pants?
I used to be very religious about it. I don't really do it anymore. If I start noticing, if I think after, for example, a trip to France, and I think, then I'll weigh myself just to, get a feel for where I am, and then react accordingly. But generally, you can feel it on your clothing. So I'm not a big weigher anymore. No.
Good.
Yeah.
And foods too. And, we learned this at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, New York, and Maryann Liess says it, when you love the foods that love you back, you don't have the inflammation. Sometimes, and Jen Stevens has said this, you did not gain 4 pounds in one day.
Right.
But
Very
you're
true.
inflamed. You haven't pooped. You didn't have enough salt. You had the wrong kind of salt. There are so many things that play into that. And not to have a knee-jerk reaction. And I love what Jen always says, never to punish ourselves after she would like to go on cruises or with your Brittany at the beach or wherever you are. It's just that, just get back to it. Maybe have a little longer fasting window the next day.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the thing that really works with intermittent fasting for me, is because before, when those very few times that I did try calorie restriction for a few days or a week, and then one day I blew it because I had a brownie, for example.
Right.
Then I thought, well, you know what? I had the brownie now. I may as well have 10 more because I ruined the day anyway.
Right.
And then I would just eat everything in sight. And I don't have that with intermittent fasting. That's not there.
Isn't that great? So, it's because we don't have the unrealistic restrictions.
Right.
That we tell ourselves, because that's it. If you told me, Lisa, you could eat everything in the world, but you couldn't eat pickled eggs, I'd go, by golly, I'm craving a pickled egg because you told me I couldn't eat the pickled egg.
That's right.
So knowing that I have the freedom to eat what I want within my window keeps us compliant.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Fung also has a philosophy about compliance for his morbidly obese patients. And that's why I'm surprised you didn't do this. And that is the creamer and the coffee, the bone broth and all that. But you sailed right through it.
I ripped the Band-Aid right off.
You really did.
Yeah.
Well, Maryann, you are a delight. You are beautiful inside and out. And
thank you so much, Lisa. It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was really nice. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for working this out in your schedule, because I know you're busy and it's a different time of day. It's later in the afternoon. So is today an eating day for you or no?
Today is not an eating day.
And you feel great, don't you?
And I feel great. I feel great.
Does eating then so when I do that, when I've done a few longer fasts, when I do eat, I'm really tired after I have that first meal in 36, 38, 40 hours, because it's like this insulin rush and it just drops my glucose. At first the insulin comes in, drops your glucose, and then it builds it back up. But eating actually makes me tired, makes me sleepy.
See, I don't experience it that much. Now, I'm not all that good with just sticking to 2 meals or even 3 meals I call it on an eat day. So I do still tend to graze so much, what isn't probably great. I try to limit that. I'm trying to limit that right now.
Well, it's working for you.
It is working. You know what? At the end of the day, that's what counts. That's what counts. But maybe that's why maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't really feel tired after I start to eat. I don't know.
I see that. I can see that. And Dr. Kristen Verity, is that how that's pronounced? Varady, the Every Other Day Diet. Yeah. She's a PhD researcher. She is the one who says, she doesn't look at it as a window. She says one day, she says 500 calories,
Right.
Then the next day it's a free for all, and then back to lower. And she doesn't, I think from that research, it wasn't based on a time of day to eat it within a window or to eat too.
Right.
She just says eat 25% more than you typically would.
That's pretty much what I'm doing, except of course for the 500 calories on the down day. But that sounds very much like what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that just shows, and we know this, we have individuality. What works for me doesn't work for you. And that's why you do have to tweak it.
That's right.
And you do have to see which one works for you. So I love hearing your perspective that it wasn't a daily eating window, and your results are more than impressive.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Have you been to a physician there to see that you?
I'm going next week. So I have not. That's another thing when we talk about the NSVs. I used to get sick all the time. If there was a cold going around, I was sure to get it. Yeah. I had the flus. Yeah. At least I'd say at least 3 times a year I was really sick. And between then, I always had a cold. Wow. I have not been sick in 2 years.
Wow.
In 2 years. I have not. Another thing is headaches. I used to take a lot of Advil for headaches. I can't remember the last time I had to take an Advil. I don't get headaches anymore. I also had probably the last half year before I started with intermittent fasting, I had something called, I wrote this down because I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm going to try it. Acanthosis nigricans.
Acanthosis nigricans. It's a sign of high insulin. It's a brown ring around your neck.
Exactly. Well, I had it in my chest area.
Oh.
And I thought it was odd. I thought that's odd. I never went to the doctor. I thought it was heat related or, I had no idea. Anyway, just the other day, I came across, I think in a podcast, they were talking about it, how this one skin condition was pretty much a sure sign of diabetes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And so I Googled it, and that is exactly what I had. The picture, it was exactly 1-to-1 what I had. That's been gone for, oh God, I don't even know, probably a year and a half.
And skin tags. Are you blue-eyed?
I'm actually hazel.
Hazel-eyed. So, are you red-haired? That's what it looks like. Okay, it looks like you. Well, sometimes that coloring will have. Sometimes blondes for sure will really get the skin tag. Well, I say that. I know a brunette with them, but my blonde clients are the ones that'll say, "Oh my gosh, my skin tag," and they have light eyes. My skin tags fell off. So I don't know if that has something to do with complexion. Okay. Yeah. But did you ever have skin tags around your neck, under your arms?
I don't have skin tags. No, that I've never had.
Because that's also a sign of high insulin resistance. Dr. Bickman says the acanthosis nigricans is a definite sign of insulin resistance, which even if you go to the doctor and your blood glucose is 92, you can still be insulin resistant because they're not testing. He says they need to be testing your fasting insulin. That's it. So when you go to the doctor, I want you to have your fasting insulin checked because it's probably 1 or 2, really low. And then I can't wait to see the doctor. I need you to take a picture of the doctor's face when he's looking at you and looking at the before and after of your lab work and what you have on the scale.
Yeah.
So you keep preaching it, sister. You tell the Germans.
I most
You tell the
certainly will.
Germans. I'll tell the people in Arkansas between here and Fort Worth and the beach. Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.